Welcome to the American Indian and Alaska Native Behavioral Health webinar series presented by the National American Indian and Alaska Native Addiction Technology Transfer Center. I'm Kate Trams, and I'll be administering today's webinar. Today we actually have Alex Mendez joining us to present this vitamin D and depression in Alaska Natives. Originally, we had Ray Daw scheduled to be giving this presentation, but in his work, he has actually had an urgent need to travel where he does not have good internet access. So he is unfortunately able to join us. And yeah, we just wanted to let everyone know that he was called away, and we wanted to be thinking about him and the people that he's serving today. So thankfully, Alex has stepped in. He has been working on this project with Ray Daw and Dr. Clyde McCoy, who he works with as a research assistant at the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine. So we're just so grateful that Alex has stepped in today and is going to give us an overview of this project. So we can at least get a good taste of it. It might not be the full presentation that Ray had planned, but we're just so grateful that Alex is here to share it with us and that we can get an idea of what they've been working on with this project. So this training series is brought to you by the National American Indian and Alaska Native Addiction Technology Transfer Center, or ATTC. We're one of 4 national focus centers which serve the ATTC network. The network also includes 10 regional centers and a network coordinating office. To learn more about our center, the network, or your regional center, please visit our website. The next webinar in this series is scheduled for Wednesday, November 5th, when Suzanne Carroll Duffy will present Creative Therapy for Traumatized Children, the moving story of play therapy method. We also offer an essential substance abuse skills webinar series each month. The next session in this series will be held on October 15th, when Anthony Staley and Dolores Subia Bigfoot will present professional and ethical responsibilities. For more information on our webinar series, you can contact me at the email address or phone number provided on this slide. Our center is a NADAC certified educational provider, and we'd be happy to provide you with CEHs for a $15 fee. The CEH request form is available for download in the Files pod in the webinar screen. I will also be sending this form in a follow-up email to all who attended. Immediately following today's webinar, you will be redirected to our GPRA evaluation. GPRA stands for the Government Performance and Results Act, and SAMHSA asks us to evaluate our events in order to comply with this act and provide improved performance assessment and accountability. This survey asks about your satisfaction with the event and will take less than 10 minutes to complete. We thank you in advance for helping us to improve our programs. Before we start today's session, I'd like to go over a few instructions for the Adobe Connect system. To view the presentation in full screen mode, click on the full screen button at the top right corner of the presentation pod, which looks like 4 arrows pointing outward. To return to the regular view, click the button again. You will be muted for the duration of this webinar. Please use the Q&A pod to share your comments and questions, and we will address questions at appropriate points in the presentation. I just wanted to let you know, too, when it comes to questions, we will take questions at the end of the presentation, and there may be questions that Alex might not be able to speak to given the fact that he joined this project when it was already underway, but we will address any questions that he might not be able to answer fully to Dr. McCoy and to Ray Daw, and they will follow up after this presentation and answer some of those questions as well. So please feel free to submit questions at any time, and we will do our best to respond to them. We would also like you to be aware that the webinar records participant attention. If you minimize the webinar or are working in another window, the system will record your participation as inactive, which may be reflected in the number of CEHs received. The opinions expressed in this presentation are those of the presenter and do not necessarily reflect the official position of CSAT, SAMHSA, or the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Today's webinar is presented by Alex Mendez. Alex is in his first year of the Masters of Public Health program and was working as a research assistant to Dr. Claude McCoy, who is a member of our advisory council. Alex has been working with Dr. McCoy, along with Ray Daw and Marika Reyes, on the Vitamin D Depression in Alaska Natives project, which he'll be presenting today. I just want to thank Alex so much for joining us today and for jumping in and being able to share. I'm excited for everyone here to hear about this. So I'll pass things over to you at this time, Alex, and thanks again.
Thanks, Kate. I'm honored to be here with you guys and presenting. As she mentioned, as Kate mentioned, Ray Dow wasn't able to be here, and Dr. McCoy also is traveling a lot. So I'm gonna try to do my best. My expertise isn't to their level, but I definitely very passionate and have been working with this project. So I'll try to give you the most comprehensive basic information of vitamin D depression among Alaska Natives. And with that, we'll start. So the main purpose of this project and of this topic is we wanted to first discuss research topic and questions, and after that, analyze variables while developing and sampling designs, study designs, and methodology. And finally, after we completed those tasks and viewing those statistics, to then answer and understand limitations and possible obstacle hurdles, and determining vitamin D deficiency among Alaska Natives. So we asked, why do Alaska Natives have the highest suicide rates? I know it's definitely a statistic that everybody wants to have minimized among all types of minorities, cultural, racial, everything. So, but we personally underwent the task of seeing the suicide rates in Alaska Natives. Alaska has the highest suicide per capita rate in the country, which is staggering. There's approximately 1,400 suicides from 2000 to 2009. And that averaged about 2.6 suicides per week and 10 per month. And men had a higher incidence of suicide than women. Suicide is an action that can be combated, as 90% of the people that commit suicide have specific medical conditions that are known or unknown. So it's definitely an action and something that occurs that we feel could be minimized and brought to a halt immediately. The American Indian and Alaska Natives have the highest rate of depression and substance abuse. If you see the chart, Alaska residents are about 2 times greater than the U.S. total per 100,000 individuals, and Alaska Natives are nearly 3 times the rate, or they're more than 3 times the rate. I mean, it's staggering statistics. So we thought that it was imperative to undergo the task and looking at what could cause that. The depression has been linked to a seasonal affective disorder. So for those that haven't heard of that, it's simply when depression starts at the beginning of a specific season and ends during that season. It varies among individuals. It can be completely different. It just, like I said, it's on a person-to-person basis. Historical trauma. So historical trauma can include anything in their past, growing up, even a day before that could have caused depression. And more specifically is vitamin D deficiency. That's the main purpose of this project. So we definitely, that was our main goal, and that's what we're going to try to show you the foundations of today. So as you can see here also in this chart, over the past 15 years, American Indians and Alaska Natives have consistently had the highest or nearly the highest rate of psychological distress. From 1999 to 2000, they were at 7.2 per 100,000. It went up from 2001 to 2002. It lowered in 2004, 2005, and it increased again in 2010 and 11. So as you can see, they've been consistently at the top of the list. Not necessarily that it's a statistic that is good, but it's just to bring awareness to the fact that the American Indians and Alaska Natives are in a lot of distress, psychological distress. So that's the approach we had there. So here, just a little background on vitamin D. Vitamin D is involved in more than just bone development. Sometimes it's thought that vitamin D is only a part of bone development, but it has so many other effects within the body. It's actually the only vitamin that's a hormone, which is incredible. So it has such an effect on the body in so many different aspects, as I've mentioned. Vitamin D activates genes in the immune system and thus releasing neurotransmitters such as dopamine and serotonin. Dopamine and serotonin, they affect the mood. So we felt that it was imperative to understand how vitamin D affected the body and then further it could affect depression and other psychological conditions. And as you can see from just these statements here and from the picture, that vitamin D has a major effect on the body. So as important as seasonal affective disorders, historical trauma, we felt vitamin D deficiency could be corrected, maybe in a better manner, and would have that serious effect. So that's where our main emphasis is on. So here's the pathway. As you can see, diet affects vitamin D. The sun affects vitamin D. Vitamin D has effect on seasonal affective disorder, and the seasonal affective disorder has an effect on vitamin D, which then affects mental health and depression. So we need to look at this from an overall encompassing view. We can't look at it simply as our diet, the effect on vitamin D, or just the amount of sun we have that can increase vitamin D, or family history, mental disorders, historical trauma, etc. We need to see how everything interrelates within an individual's body, affecting their psychological state. Mental health and depression is a major combatant that we're trying to go against and try to correct as much as possible. So we need to make sure that we include any and every aspect that can affect an individual. So as you can see on the other moving slide, this is just another recap of it, and that there's so many relationships within so many aspects affecting vitamin D in an individual. So in here we worked with an inverted pyramid in which we began with clinical trials at the experimental level, and then we worked our way up into the meta-analysis and systematic review, which was is considered phase 1, which I'll show in the next slide. So it's just a compilation of unknown research on the subject into one meta-analysis of the finding. So phase 2 included drawing conclusions from observations through descriptive cross-sectional studies, which it incorporates the patterns of disease occurrence, as well as analytical describing the causal hypothesis about the disease etiology. Cross-sectional is a perfect first step in a cohort study, and that will be explained later in this presentation. Phase 3 included experimental studies through randomized controlled trials. So this provided us an opportunity to gather useful information about adverse effects such as drug reactions. So just simply because vitamin D can have a positive effect on the body, it can also have negative effects if abused. That takes into account, once again, the diet, the sun, everything that can incorporate it to increase or decrease the vitamin D levels. So that needed to be taken into account. So that was our phase 3 of our study. So all good studies must include what? They must include accuracy, precision, proper sampling, power, and randomization. Randomization is because it ensures representation, otherwise subject to selection bias. Power for statistical significance. Proper sampling techniques to avoid selection bias. Precision for to be able to reproduce subject to random error by instrument, observer, or subject. And accuracy is subject to systematic error, can be reduced by accurate recording, transferring of data, and by blinding observers and subjects. So it's important that all good studies include all of these steps to provide the most concise and strong presentation of the information. So here, as I mentioned in a previous slide about the cross-sectional study, this is why we felt a cross-sectional study was advantageous. It's inexpensive, quick, there's no loss of follow-up, and it's a good first step for the cohort study in clinical studies. It's relatively fast to conduct, So this was a great way to start our study on vitamin D deficiency. But for every advantage, there is a disadvantage, and it lacks temporality and is impractical for rare diseases. Depression isn't necessarily a rare disease, so we still feel that a cross-sectional study was a great starting point in observing vitamin D deficiency among Alaskan natives. Our hypothesis was that vitamin D is not associated with an increased risk for depression among Alaskan natives. Our alternative is that there is an association. So this slide describes the variables that we undertook in this study. Our dependent variable was the depression score and suicide attempts. Our independent variable was the vitamin D levels of those individuals. And the covariates are age, gender, family history of mental illness, SAD diagnosis, estimated sun exposure, and estimated dietary and supplemental intake of vitamin D. We thought the covariates were very important as we wanted to incorporate anything and everything that could affect those levels of vitamin D. As I mentioned throughout this presentation, it's not simply one vitamin, one central hormone that affects the body. It's the overall life, it's the overall environment of that individual. So we wanted to include that in our variables. So the levels of vitamin D in the body / blood have different effects and thus different outcomes. As you can see here, for adequate levels of vitamin D, under 20 nanograms per milliliter is widely considered a vitamin D deficiency. Greater than 30 nanograms per milliliter is considered sufficient, and greater than 150 nanograms per milliliter is considered an overdose. Hypercalcemia and oversupplementation can lead to adverse problems. So that's why it's important to understand that an overconsumption can also be negative for an individual, just because we feel vitamin D can combat depression and can help suicide rates. It's not to just simply oversupplement vitamin D, because it can have adverse effects and thus lead to the suicide rate that we're trying to prevent. So it's important to know the levels and what's considered safe and what's considered dangerous for the individual. So here's a population sample. There are 109,717 total Alaska natives residing in Alaska. That was in 2010. So for us, we took a sample of the people from the total population using a two-stage cluster sample. One of hospital or service site, and the second is of patients from those chosen sites. So we felt that our sample was concise and that it provided a good representation of the statistics as we moved. Here's a map of Alaska and the Yukon River, and sorry for the pronunciation, sometimes it's listed, but the Kuskokwim River. This just also shows where we were able to find the sample and the individuals that were part of it. Another few examples. You can see here, you can get vitamin D from a variety of supplements: cheese, butter, margarine, fortified milk, fish, fortified cereals, and other food sources, the sun. And then the next one, it shows the effects of vitamin D deficiency on the body. We'll touch base on a few of the concerns that can arise and a few of the diseases that can arise from vitamin D deficiency. But here it is also spread out in the second picture on the right-hand side. For example, lung disease, circulatory disease, muscle and bone disease. The immune system has an immediate effect to a vitamin D deficiency. So it's important that we take into account vitamin D and take into account the safe levels of it as well. So as you saw in the picture to the right, this describes the different diseases that can come about from vitamin D deficiencies. I'm not going to read the specific explanations of the diseases, but I do want to bring out just the name of the disease and just show you the immediate effect that deficiency of vitamin D can have. First, the flu, muscle weakness, psoriasis, chronic kidney disease, diabetes, asthma, periodontal disease, cardiovascular disease, schizophrenia and depression, and cancer. So as you can see, the deficiency doesn't only affect depression, doesn't only affect suicide rates, it affects so much more. And there's so many health disparities and minorities that we need to take into account everyone, and we really need to take into account the best way to provide that environment, to provide that atmosphere for individuals to succeed and for individuals to thrive. So with this information, it's staggering, and it really shows that we need to be careful, and we need to create that environment and the area for individuals to health-wise and socially and environmentally to thrive. So here in this statistics, it shows that cancer is prevalent in about 312 individuals per 100,000 in Alaska Natives, and suicide is 1/3 of that at 71.9. So cancer is a chronic disease that affects so many lives, and suicide, it's an action that can be compatible by increasing vitamin D and by giving that support structure. So I mean, the statistics are staggering that this vitamin D deficiency can have such an effect on suicide, and that suicide it's 1/3 of a disease that unfortunately has taken many lives. So that's just a statistic that shows, and it shows some of the other chronic diseases that have come about due to the vitamin D deficiency. So here we want to just bring out the top 7 of success of vitamin D setup therapy. You have less tiredness, less cramp, less orthostatic problems, less listlessness, better disposition, less eye batting, and less uneasiness of sleep. These all seem that they don't relate necessarily to suicide rates or depression, but it really does. Everything within the day of an individual can affect his or her disposition, his or her attitude. So by having less sleep can affect them, having less cramps, tiredness, etc. So it just shows that vitamin D may not directly improve the depression, but it will improve other factors of depression that can lead to increased values. So here it shows most of the values of vitamin D is obtained by sunlight. Deficiency can, like I've mentioned, have chronic problems and just a wide variety of diseases. Right. So here are a few of the health studies. First one was the Rasmussen Foundation. Its goal was to identify the social, cultural, and behavioral factors associated with the health status of the people in the YK Delta region and seek if there is a relationship between these elements and vitamin D deficiency. So this was one of the major goals, and one of the things that Ray Dow and Dr. McCoy, Marika, and myself both wanted to undertake and go after. From Dr. Clyde McCoy, a Cherokee himself, an epidemiologist here at Miller School of Medicine, his goal was to understand the effect of vitamin D deficiency that have on depression and suicide rate among Alaska Natives. Dr. McCoy is an incredibly special and knowledgeable individual, and when he undergoes a task, he always does it with great passion, and his work here has shown that vitamin D deficiencies not only have an effect on depression, but a wide variety of chronic diseases among different minorities, specifically, though, American Indians and Alaskan Natives. Here's a table just with the different populations, the treatment and the maintenance treatment, etc. So I'm not going to go deep into that chart because it has a lot of statistics, but it's definitely there and available for you to go. And if you have any questions about this chart, feel free to reach out to any of us. So in vitamin D treatment, as I mentioned, there are many positives, and there are many great things that come about it, but there are risk factors just with anything. For example, if you have too dark of skin, intestinal malabsorption, inflammatory bowel disease, gastric bypass, no sun exposure, osteomalacia, fragility fractures, anticonvulsant therapy, renal disease, refugees, and immigrants. So vitamin D can improve and really help individuals psychologically, but it can also have a risk. So as I've mentioned before throughout this presentation, it's important that it's used in moderation, and it's used very specifically and with the right doses and right procedure. Here are a few pictures Dr. McCoy, if you look at the center picture, he's the one with the hood on and the glasses, right directly under the under the driver to the left. These are a few pictures from the peninsula and from the trip when they went to Alaska to initially receive and obtain these statistics. I mean, it's a beautiful place, and as you can see, there's plenty of sunlight, so there is a lot of vitamin D that is available to be obtained by the sunlight, but just because you obtain vitamin D from the sunlight doesn't necessarily mean your levels are going to increase exponentially, so you have to include your diet, your home environment, anything and everything that can positively affect the increase to a certain extent and not overdo it needs to be done. Once again, I mean, it's beautiful landscape. It's beautiful. So the landscape and the environment does provide a good foundation and a good place for those individuals to be in a state that it's with less depression and less anxiety and psychological issues, environmentally wise, socially as well. You see, it's beautiful. But we also need to take into account many disparities and many other issues. But like I said, I wanted to provide you guys with these pictures so you would see the area and how beautiful it is. One last thing, these are some of the inhabitants. It's mind-blowing. You see it, I mean, the culture, the beauty, the water, the landscape, everything is just beautiful. So it's important to, just because it's a small area, to not disregard it. And that's where we went. We went into the heart, and we tried to get as much solid statistics as possible. And with that, I just want to thank you all for listening in and being part of this webinar. I do apologize that Dr. McCoy and Ray Dow weren't able to be here. They're extremely intelligent and knowledgeable individuals on this topic and know the specifics more. But please feel free if you have any questions and if there's anything that we can do to continue to work and to work with you all, please let us know and we'd be happy to. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Alex. And as he mentioned, please submit questions. If you had your presentation in full screen mode, you'll want to click out of that so that you can see the Q&A pod, which should be just to the right of the presentation pod. You can type in the bottom of that pod to submit a question, and yeah, we'd love to take some time for that now. Alex, I had a question for you. If you happen to know, along with sort of, sounds like this is mostly an information stage, but is there plans with this project to do an education or a sort of information dissemination piece so that this, people living in this area will know, that they might have a vitamin D deficiency and know what to do about it? Or is that a part of this at all? Or
No, absolutely it is. I know Dr. McCoy and Ray and Marique and myself, we're trying to continue to extend this project, and we're trying to incorporate as many individuals as possible and get the statistics out and find ways to see how psychological or other diseases are linked to vitamin D deficiency and what can be done to improve that. We wish it was an overnight solution and we could do everything to solve the issues now, but it is an ongoing and we continue to work towards that.
Great. We had a question coming in from Natalie. She asks, why are immigrants and refugees particularly at risk for vitamin D deficiency? Is that something you could speak to, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Immigrants and refugees are at risk for vitamin D deficiency as into that area because, like all of us are, we're used to our environments, we're used to our lifestyle, diets, environmental, social, etc. So when you move outside of, I guess you could say, your comfort zone of your environment, going to a new area, your body has to adjust. So often immigrants and refugees are at risk at the fact that their bodies do not make that adjustment and then and thus create that deficiency. It could be minor, it could be major, it could be inexistent, it could be so minor that it's not even felt. But immigrants and refugees are at risk at the fact that their environment is changing. It could cause biological differences in the body.
Great. And then we had a question from Rosemary about whether the PowerPoint presentation can be printed. There is in the underneath the presentation pod, there is a files pod, and you can see there's a CEH request form, and then handouts are just below that. If you click on that, you can download it. If you're not able to download it, it'll actually be attached in a follow-up email that we'll be sending out as well. So you can look for it there too. And then I'll just mention too, somebody previously had asked about the session being recorded. We do always record these webinars. I shared the link there to the particular page on our website where these webinars are listed, and then you'll see links to both the recording and the handouts there as well. So we have another question from Emma. You mentioned too little vitamin D causes kidney disease issues. What does too much vitamin D do to a person's kidneys? Do you happen to know that? Know or be able to speak with that?
Emma, I wish that I could answer that, but I don't know all the information on what too much vitamin D could cause to the kidney. So I think that's a question that I could definitely we could reach out to Dr. McCoy or Ray or Marika, and they could definitely answer that better. I don't want to give any information that could steer you one way or the other and give you any false information that's misleading. So I think definitely reaching out to Ray and Marika or Ray Dow would definitely be the best option.
Perfect. Yeah, I will submit. I'll submit that question and any other questions we come across that we might not be able to address right now, and I'll submit those to them and send them out to everyone who attended once they've replied to those. So Sally has a question. Has there been any research, RE, the difference between liquid-based vitamin D or in pill form as to the best form of efficacy for boosting levels of vitamin D?
As Sally, as far as I know, we haven't necessarily found any difference in between and now. I don't know if we've done extensive research to even test for that, but I know that, like I've mentioned throughout the presentation, the overall environment can affect the vitamin D. So I think that's definitely something that we definitely need to look into and study further.
So Natalie has a question. I would love for my clinicians to start collecting this data when responding to an on-call situation. How long before you think we could get enough data?
We had a lot of support in the peninsula, and we had a lot of support in this project, and there's a lot of backing for it. So I couldn't give you a specific timetable on the amount of time, but I definitely think that if we continue to work at the pace we're going, it should be hopefully in the near future. Hopefully we can start getting more data on it and more stronger and relevant data.
Great. And Emma has a question. Can you tell me how often a person should be tested for vitamin D deficiency through a blood test? And I'm guessing that might vary a little bit for those living in Alaska, where there are the amount of sunlight varies greatly from one time of year to the next. But is that something you could speak to a little bit?
This is a question, Emma. You're giving me the tough questions, but I'm not exactly sure. Not exactly sure on how often a person should be tested. So that's, I think, definitely another question we should reach out to Dr. McCoy and Ray and Marika.
Great. And this one, not sure if we have an answer for this one either, but do you know what the dosage is recommended if taking vitamin D3 pills?
No. I specifically don't know that information. I'm not sure if throughout the statistics and the observations we have come to that conclusion either. But definitely I could reach out like the other couple questions to see what that dosage should be.
And I'll go back because I know one of your slides it's a little bit hard to read, but you should be able to read this a little bit better in the handouts. If people want to take a look at this slide, it looks like this is maybe a recommended dosage for those who are in treatment, and as Alex mentioned, I'm guessing it might vary depending on I think a a doctor or who the clinicians would probably talk with the patients about what their intake might be from food as well, so they don't overdose with the vitamin D
Right.
as well.
Right, exactly, and it's really a person by person basis. All of us, our biological makeup is completely different, so it definitely is dependent on the person and depending on many other factors.
Great. And then Sally asks, is the screening available to share, which was used to collect the data?
I do believe that we have the screening available. I think we do have that information. We don't have it on the presentation, but like I said, I do believe we have it. So that's something we could definitely reach out, and I could try to look and try to locate that for you all.
Great, wonderful. Those are all the questions that we have at the moment. So yeah, I just wanted to thank you so much, Alex, and yeah, thank you again for being willing to jump in on this last minute and share this wonderful project that you are working on with Mr. Daw and Dr. McCoy. And I just have a few little follow up or ending things to share with everyone, and then we will close out here. Second. So let me. Okay. So as I mentioned, I will be sending a follow-up email to everyone who attended, as well as those, if you know others who registered but were not able to attend, they will also get a follow-up email, which will include the link to the recording of the webinar, as well as the handouts. And also I'm including the link to our survey in case you automatically redirected to it at the end of the session here. And then I'll just put up our upcoming webinars here for everyone to see again. We'd love to have everyone join us again for the ones we have coming up in the next couple of months. And want to thank everyone so much for joining us again today. And thank you so much, Alex. It's been a real pleasure hearing about this project and the wonderful work that you and Dr. McCoy and Ray Daw and Marika have been working on. And yeah, just thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and thank you for having me.
Great. All right, and with that, we will go ahead and end the webinar, and you should be redirected to our survey. Thanks so much.
Thank you.